E-commerce B2B, business to business models and concepts. Let's talk about that. The B2B space, the business to business space, it dwarfs the business to consumer space. And, that kind of, is counterintuitive to most of us as consumers, because that's what we see is the, MLB.com, the Macy's.com. We see that every day. These business to business entities, either online or in the physical world, are really the bulk of what drives economies. So the numbers are, let me just take a quick look, 4.1 trillion in 2012 for B2B versus 360 billion in B2C. So quite larger on the B2B side. So B2B has been around for a long time. And electronically, it's been around for a while too, even before the proliferation of internet and World Wide Web, or at least the commercial internet and commercial World Wide Web. You'll need to know a term, because a lot of B2B companies still use it. It's called EDI, Electronic Data Interchange. And that essentially is a formatting standard that allows data from different businesses, buyers, and suppliers who purchase from those, who businesses purchase from the suppliers, the vendors, can electronically process things like purchase orders and invoices, shipping notices. All of those are spec'd out, specified within the EDI standard. So that's important to know. It is a much older system. It's been around a long time before the advent of the World Wide Web and the more open nature of today's digital business models. It is a proprietary system. It's challenged in the way it can scale, or lack of scalability, to add on easily more buyer-supplier relationships. So as B2B e-commerce becomes more adopted, it's taking over for EDI. Though EDI is not going to disappear completely, or it'll take a long time to disappear. There will be remnants of it in the back office and the legacy systems for times to come. Leading edge companies that are building new businesses typically are using more digital XML type formats, XBRL, the extensible business rules language, and things like that, which are the successors to EDI. And we'll talk about that a little bit, probably more so in the 12th week, where we go into e-commerce B2B collaboration. Okay, so let's talk about the major types of business models in B2B, or business to business. Very simply, net marketplaces and private industrial networks. Net marketplaces, digital marketplaces, using the internet or digital environments to conduct business. Both sides, the buyer and seller, are using digital tools to communicate and process transactions, to display, to deliver notification about transactions and shipments. We'll go into a quick overview in this lesson about e-distributors, e-procurement, exchanges, and consortiums run by big industry players. And we'll touch on that. And also we'll talk a little bit about private industrial networks and how that differentiates a bit from consortiums. We'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each. Okay, so e-distributor business model is probably the one you'd be most familiar with. It's very similar to business to consumer. It's modeled after a typical retail store or a wholesaler. Again, the constituents are businesses selling to businesses. And typically in an e-distributorship, it's indirect goods as opposed to direct goods. So indirect goods are things like motors that drive assembly lines, janitorial supplies for facilities that do production, not direct goods. Direct goods might be the plate, the glass plate that goes into the iPhone, and the steel casing that goes into the iPhone. That's more direct goods. Indirect goods, again, are goods that support the business and the delivery and the production of goods. So they're also known as maintenance, repair, and operational goods, MRO. Maintenance, repair, and operational goods. Typically, distributorships are owned by one company, again, to scale and serve many customers. So it's a online store. Sales of goods is the revenue model. Very interesting company. Take a look at Grainger. They were an early user of the Interworld e-commerce platform. The e-commerce platform that I was involved with as product manager back in the late 90s. And, the platform that many distributors will use is either tailored, customized to their business or modified to their business, or they'll use a B2C platform and then modify it towards their business. So that's where Interworld was. We competed and delivered our platform to both the retailers, DisneyStore.com, ToysRUs.com. We also delivered it to e-distributors like MSCSupply.com here on Long Island and Grainger.com. Grainger's interesting because it fully utilized huge catalog of merchandise. Take a look at it. It's got hundreds of thousands of product SKUs and items. I was on the site recently, and I bought a combination lock for my son's Foot Locker that he has up at college. So I was searching around. It was hard to find in the local retail stores. I found it at a Grainger. Saw it online. Then I purchased it offline at a local store. So that was a click-to-brick transaction. Okay. E-procurement is another business model for B2B. It's interesting in the sense that where innovators come in like Ariba and Commerce One, and they build digital markets. They also focus on indirect goods, as I mentioned before, the goods that support the production and the delivery of end items such as iPhones. And what it is, it's a hosted environment. So you'll hear the term SaaS, software as a service, on demand, cloud-based service. So it's a hosted environment by a company like Ariba that allows businesses to transact through a centralized e-procurement marketplace. So it's a provider of supply chain management, fulfillment services. They charge service fees. So a small company, a mid-sized company that's a seller in B2B that maybe can't afford the breadth and depth of a Grainger.com or an MSCSupply.com will go to an Ariba to actually get their site hosted so they could sell to other businesses. So it's a hosting site for businesses and provides full services, order processing, catalog display, fulfillment, transportation services, supply chain management. So B2B service providers, application service providers are some of the terms that you'll hear. So companies like Ariba and Commerce One are providers of these application services that businesses then subscribe to and utilize and have hosted. Exchanges are another B2B business model. Typically, they're fragmented and owned by independents in specific verticals. Could be aluminum, could be steel, could be. So those are some of the examples, and they're typically commodity oriented. again, a hosted environment or exchange, a marketplace, all digital, where buyers and sellers can come together and find each other. The challenge is, well, they're transaction-based commission fees, so there's a hosted environment that actually owns the infrastructure and allows the buyers and sellers to come in and they take a vig or a percentage, either transaction of each transaction or a commission fee based on the hosting of products that are on their sites. There's a lot of competition between suppliers in these exchanges. A lot of them bubbled up, 1,500 to 2,000 of them in the early 2000s. But there was a lot of price competition, huge price competition across suppliers. So the number of exchanges has actually dropped dramatically, and it's potentially very few will remain. So in many cases, it was for many exchanges, it was a failed business model, though some may survive. Okay, business-to-business industry consortia is another model, typically owned by big players in the industries. And it's only open, it's a selective marketplace, only open to select suppliers. So in the aerospace and defense industry, such as EchoStar, it's really owned by the mammoth players, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Rolls-Royce, the big players in aerospace and defense. And they only open it to select suppliers that they have long-term relationships, suppliers that have been approved and have been vetted. They are exchanges, but they're more successful than typical commodity-oriented exchanges. These are very specialized. They're, again, sponsored by these powerful players in the industry, as I mentioned. And their strength really is in traditional purchasing behavior from the perspective of that these buyers that consort and put together this digital marketplace, Boeing Aerospace and Lockheed Martin Aerospace and Defense, Rolls-Royce, have a lot of clout over suppliers. But also these are big, strong, tough suppliers, so there's a balance there and a level of respect. And through this consortia, a variety of revenue models, transaction, commission fees that are collected on the operation of the consortia. But it's really about having the best suppliers, the best products, the best known supply chains, best delivery methods, best pricing, or at least agreed upon pricing. So it's a premium model and much more successful than classic exchange model. Private industrial networks are another version, and they're not, they're differentiated from net marketplaces, but again, they're a digital network, really focused on the communication between companies and suppliers and sub-suppliers working together to service a business or a sector, but typically will evolve out of a huge company's supply chain and internal enterprise systems and their relationships with vendors and suppliers. So Walmart is a great example of this. Walmart wanting to gain more efficiencies from its suppliers took control and took the expense of building a private industrial network to actually help its suppliers communicate better. So delivery suppliers will work with produce suppliers, will work with packaged goods suppliers, accessory suppliers, consumer electronic suppliers, for example, to work together. So Walmart will actually put suppliers of different and complementary offerings together to actually work to provide better service as an ecosystem, supply and value chain ecosystem for Walmart. So that's a very interesting concept, and more of that will grow as bigger companies such as the Walmarts of the world, the mid-sized, the upper companies. Obviously, Walmart is one of the biggest companies in the world. So companies look to emulate Walmart on a modified scale or a smaller scale, but to gain supplier efficiencies.